In a recent statement, President Joe Biden responded to fears that there will be no passage of a voting rights bill. And of course, this follows conservative Democratic senators like Senator Manchin and Sinema, essentially saying that they are in no way in favor of reforming the filibuster to essentially create a pathway for the passage of a voting rights bill. Now remember, it's important to pass a voting rights bill, not only due to the fact that you have several red states that have passed voter suppression laws, but also when you look at the redistricting that's been taking place, the gerrymandering that's been taking place, it's very clear that the Republican Party has gone out of its way to draw these electoral maps to give them an increased advantage in winning in these elections. And so it's important for them to pass it. But what does Joe Biden have to say about it, since he did not persuade these conservative senators to reform the filibuster? Remember, if you don't reform the filibuster, you would need 60 votes in the Senate to pass a voting rights bill. You could create a carve out in the filibuster so you could pass it with a simple majority. But they can't even do that. And so here's what Biden said. The honest to God answer is, I don't know whether we can get this done. Biden said that after leaving a more than hour-long meeting with Senate Democrats to persuade them to change the Senate's rules. I hope we can get this done, but I'm not sure. So I just want to remind you all very briefly of what campaign Biden was like versus the Biden that you just heard from today. Because during the Democratic primary for the 2020 presidential election, Joe Biden ensured that he stood out as the Democratic candidate who could really get things done. The Democratic candidate, Jack, I know, he's the guy who battled Corn Pop. He's the tough guy who can persuade the GOP to work with him. He's so much better than a Democratic socialist like Bernie Sanders, because unlike Sanders, he would be the one who would be so persuasive, so effective that he could get Republicans on board with his agenda. The only thing he got Republicans on board with, by the way, is a corporate handout infrastructure bill. That's it. He can't even get members of his own damn party to make one small reform to the legislative filibuster to pass voting rights. It's unbelievable. I mean, Waz, how do you ever support a party like this? Considering how.
One second, Anna.
Yeah.
Imagine this. Oh, Gal Gadot's making me feel good about the end of democracy as we know it. This is cool. I'm feeling much better right now. No, but seriously though. It is really discouraging when you see the fecklessness of the Democratic Party on a national level. Like they just cannot do anything collectively. Like they just don't have the internal will to get this done. And look, and to me, the only way to spin this positive is that you do need to win some, councilmen, state assemblymen, a few of more of those races, and you can reverse some of these decisions on the state level, on a more molecular level, right? Because obviously, if there was a national answer to this, the Dems would be doing it, but they're not. I don't know what else to say. I just think this has to happen on a more local level because that is where they're doing the gerrymandering and redistricting. Because as you said, Anna, they're very organized on the state level and they can move in unison on those things in places like Kansas, in places like Georgia, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's got to be the answer because there's no proof that the National Democratic Party on the federal level can get a damn thing done. There's just no proof of this.
No, it's worse than that, Waz, because when you're dealing with a solidly red state, like it's fine. I mean, if you're living in that red state, you agree with whatever policies they got going on in that red state, fine, I guess. But we're talking about an electoral system that relies on the Electoral College. And it gives an undue preference to these states that barely have any people living in them. You know what I'm saying? Like the fact that we in most of this, honestly, like why is it that we rely on the Electoral College? Like I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care as much if we didn't use that system to decide elections. And so I don't know. This is disastrous.
And
it really is.
Cornfields and barrels of hay need representation in the government too. Everybody knows this, Anna. Come on now.
It's unbelievable. It really is. He also said, by the way, like every other major civil rights bill that came along, if we missed the first time, we could come back and try the second time, he said. But it gets even better, okay? So his full statement, I don't know that we can get it done, but I know one thing, as long as I have breath in me, as long as I am in the White House, as long as I am engaged at all, I'm going to be fighting to change the way these legislatures are moving. But what? No, you don't get to present yourself as this strong leader when you can't get your own party to pass legislation that literally impacts the future of their own careers. Yes, it obviously the thing that I care about the most is not their careers, but the future of what's left of our democratic process. But as we know, people are motivated by incentives and disincentives. And you can't even get all Democrats in the Senate to agree to just one small little carve out, just to protect their own political futures. He can't do that, but he gets to, put out these strong statements. Senator Joe Manchin, he says he's not in favor of reforming the filibuster. Kyrsten Sinema, not in favor of reforming the filibuster. But Manchin gave this incredibly insulting quote, and I want to read it to you. He says, the president gave an extremely, very passionate, very good speech. It was very human and it was very touching and it was very good and it was very historic. Asked if Biden's words had changed his mind at all about not supporting the Senate rules change with a simple majority vote, Manchin simply replied, he did an excellent job. I mean.
Yeah, I just, man, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna enjoy the day when the Republicans take back the Senate, only for the fact that Joe Manchin will become irrelevant again, because this dude's public grandstanding and his peacocking these days, because he's turned himself into the most important man in the world, it just makes me want to vomit every single time. But yeah, the guy's he's a ghoul and he's disgusting, and this is what he's gonna do. And part of it too, I guess like nobody wants to set this precedent. I don't understand why they just don't go, all right, Joe, like what do you want? What do you want? Why don't we just write what you want and we'll get something? Like, what do you want, bro? But they just won't do that either. I don't know. I just don't. I'm running out of answers here. I really thought they were gonna figure out a way to get Build Back Better done. And there's some thought that eventually a diet Build Back Better will be passed.
No, Boz, don't even float that. Don't even float that. Please don't even float that. Like, what, are you filling in for Cenk right now? It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Okay, I don't want anyone to even float that garbage on our show. And I'm sorry to be like, I'm not angry at you or anything.
Please.
I'm just
no. You shouldn't be angry at me.
No, you're the best. How could I ever be angry at you? But like, guys, wake up. They're not gonna do it. We gotta stop being naive. And we gotta find other ways. There needs to be an organized, on the ground, outside strategy that doesn't just simply rely on like, oh no, it's election time. Who do we vote for? Who cares? It doesn't matter. It barely matters. It barely matters. I mean, if you had asked me in 2020, right before the general election, why does it matter? I'd say like, well, at least Democrats will stop the bleeding. No, they can't even do that anymore. They don't even stop the bleeding. So sorry, I know I'm being too negative here, but let's just be crystal clear with the audience. I'm not gonna give you guys false hope. They're not passing Build Back Better in any way, shape, or form. There isn't even gonna be a watered down version of it. Mark my words, and guess what? If I'm wrong, I'll come on the air and I'll apologize and I'll say that I was wrong. But I know I'm not wrong. I'm tired of being naive and thinking that they actually give a damn about us. They don't even give a damn about the futures of their own political careers. They can't even do the bare minimum and pass a watered down voting rights bill. It's not even the initial voting rights bill, which was of course more robust and included provisions that would do something about campaign finance reform. Manchin himself gutted that, proposed a pared back version, much like he did with the Build Back Better agenda. And then when push came to shove, gave everyone the middle finger, as he does. And if Biden genuinely cared about these issues, and I'm gonna go ahead and accuse him of not caring about these issues, you know what he would do? He would do what Trump does. Trump, again, and people get mad at me when I say this, I don't care. Obviously, he didn't face any consequences for playing hardball. Trump would stop at nothing to basically destroy any Republican who stood in his way. Do you think Biden's willing to do that? Biden's not willing to do that. If the tables were turned and Trump were the Democratic president, you know what he would do? Oh, sweet Manchin. Oh, you're standing in my way. You know that nice little federal job I gave your wife? Taking that away. I'm gonna fire her. I'll do it on Twitter and embarrass her. Your daughter broke a bunch of antitrust laws. I wanna revisit that investigation. How about that? Yeah, I am suggesting that he do that, but he won't. But it's embarrassing because the actual strong leaders in this country are the worst people who advocate for the worst things. And then you have those campaigning on representing the little guy, and what do? Feckless, flaccid, weak, pathetic.
Yeah, and the problem is, they're battling a perception problem to the Democrats, because when you do campaign with this big talk about all the stuff you're gonna do and how you care about this and how you care about that, and you don't get anything done, like it makes you look worse than, let's face it, like Donald Trump, they really didn't do anything. They, again, like what they were doing with the child separation at the border was horrible. Of course, ripping up the Iran deal was terrible. The Paris Climate Accords, awful. All they did though was pass their big tax cut, and which was completely unpopular even amongst their own constituency. Like Republican voters hated it, and they made the libs mad. They delivered that for their people.
Oh, yeah.
They got the libs mad. They pissed off the libs. Like liberals were tearing their heads apart every single day of this guy's presidency. But again, like they didn't do anything. Like, and another part of it is like Joe Biden and them, they put out all of this stimulus, a bunch of kids out of child poverty, people with a bunch are able to do a bunch of savings, all of this stuff, all of this great stuff. They don't take victory laps on it. They don't want to claim those as wins. They don't want to they don't want to accept their own wins. The small wins that they do have, they don't even want to claim them. And so I understand Anna's skepticism about their will to pass Build Back Better, because like even when they do deliver stuff for the little guy, they don't even celebrate it. It's insane to me, but whatever. Lin-Manuel Miranda writes great songs, I hear.
Man, it's embarrassing.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.